Oh, that's ISO?
Rack it up, I got a bit of the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up, she got her hands on her knees and she bringing the cake out. Smoke it up, I got some gas, some packs, I'm up in the greenhouse. Ball it up, I'm with the gang, we taking shots off the rebound.
Good morning once again to Walking Out of Lockdown. I'm Mark Abouzeid, photojournalist. Today I'm here with Simon Lüling, filmmaker, media professional, who I met at Ethnograph Film in Paris.
In that old theater in Montmartre, right on top of the hill, on top of the butte. Which, if actually, it's an interesting thing. I don't live too far from there, and so during the lockdown, and as they were loosening it up a little bit, I would sometimes go for a walk in Montmartre at night.
Yeah. And
already the air smells a little cleaner because there isn't as much traffic, pollution, activity, and so on. And there's something really mysterious about walking up in Montmartre at 11 p.m.
Oh yeah.
Alone, nobody, soul in this village.
And it's interesting because several of the experiences I've had with lockdown are a flash of childhood memories. And I remember Montmartre in the 70s and 80s. And sure enough, at night, after about midnight, 1 o'clock, when the cafes closed, you had that sense. You had this sense of Americans in Paris in the 1920s and the artists and stuff. First of all, I should mention, as background, that Simon lives in Paris, has done a lot of work and has a strong connection with Israel and also South America. And I'm always very interested in your work because both the work done in Israel, the work done in South America is very intimate. It's very living with the people. It's very much being a part of them. They're the kinds of people that are active, are involved, that have their own philosophies, and yet I feel a great empathy for your characters. Instead of even though they're so different than me, I still feel an empathy for them.
I appreciate that you look at it this way because I've come to discover, because I am, still learning that that I consider part of the documentary process is finding this intimacy with the characters, and it's something that lasts beyond the release of the film itself. Every single person I have filmed, I'm still friends with, I'm still in contact with, and I still keep up with their projects, with whatever they're up to. And so, for example, the film that we met in Paris 2 years ago, Borderline Views, which is in the Golan Heights. The main guy, the protagonist, if you will, of this film today, he's traveled a lot more, but he went back to the Golan and is opening near the border with Syria a cafe, art gallery that he's calling La Frontera, with a little Mexican twist. They're going to be serving quesadillas and
cool.
Right on the border, making the most of an odd situation.
But it's also so fascinating because, and I want to get to the main point, but there are certain aspects of this film that I think resonate for me in many ways. One, you break rules. We all asked you, because there was a strong sense of wind, there was always this constant, we all asked you, why didn't you deal with the wind? He goes, no, and I remember your answer. You said, no, I actually included that because that is the sensation of being there. The wind is always there. You can feel it. It is a very strong character of this. And second of all, that it wasn't at all what we expected. Let's go back to the beginning of the year, as I like to start. What were your expectations or goals for the coming year?
It's hard. Well, now with these 2 months that have passed, it's hard to look back and really project. There's two things. One that was completely shaken up and had to be planned, rescheduled, and another project where ultimately, I guess, I took the confinement to my advantage. So in the first part, the one that was completely shaken up, I co-organize the Paris Tattoo Convention, Le Mondial du Tatouage, which is normally scheduled every year mid-March. And the state the state health authorities told us 1 week before the event that we couldn't be held, and we were already sort of trying to save this sinking ship. People were canceling more and more strict regulations, which we would follow and adapt to. But yeah, we were 7 days before the event, expecting 30,000 people to attend. We had to close shop, and and then the whole discussion is like, well, how do we deal with this? Basically, we have all these contracts, we have all our partners and so on. Though everybody everybody had solidarity, and everybody was patient, so we're very grateful for that. And we managed to postpone it to October. And taking place, the place where we always do it is the Grand Hall de la Villette, which is a late industrial building. It used to be the big slaughterhouses of Paris, where they would bring the cattle and the sheep from the countryside, which, today it's the suburbs. They would slaughter it there and then distribute it throughout Paris to all the butchers. Now it's a beautiful building that's brick and glass panels, and I guess
I like the metaphor, though. I'm sorry, we brand all the meat we eat, and here we're doing a tattoo festival there. I think it's brilliant.
Branding a bit more meat. Anyway, we postponed it to October, although who knows if we'll still be able to hold it then, but we'll worry about that another day. But the other thing is linked to this other documentary film I made, which titled O Elo Perdido. It's in Brazil. It's called The Lost Link, and it's about the agroforestry movements throughout Brazil.
Yeah.
And without being overtly optimistic, it tries to show that there are solutions to the way we produce food and preserving nature, and and it all comes in the struggle of limiting climate change and trying to find new paradigms with which humanity can exist alongside nature. Anyway, when the lockdown started, I took the opportunity to myself do the subtitles in English of this film. It was originally only in Portuguese and maybe geared more towards a Brazilian audience, but now anybody can watch it. It's on YouTube, on the channel, on an environmental media platform that's quite big in Brazil, called Por Que Não. And then the other thing is, a follow-up project, if you will, was born following the documentary, and it is to create a platform for all those involved in reforestation and sustainable agriculture, regardless of the method, as long as it's ethical, but really, and sort of a catch-all movement. And it's both to showcase this work and to support it and show that there is a movement, that it can be strong, and it can rival, say, agro industry and Monsanto and all that garbage. And we're starting with Brazil, but we hope to expand it to the world. The platform isn't launched yet, but basically in a month and a half, it'll be ready. And we already we're building a map. We already have about 500 dots on this map, ranging from urban gardens to indigenous tribes that are, involved in maintaining the forest, to organic farms, restaurants, markets. And we've been focusing on Brazil once again, but it'll be fairly easy to deploy around, like, the system around the world. And
so you've been actually incredibly busy during lockdown.
I have been. I'm fortunate to say that I've been able to keep busy, and I try to look at it like, in times of crises, there are opportunities, if you will.
I think that's important. Now, one of the questions that, through these conversations and also looking at our own situation, I wonder is, you're a freelancer, you're independent. Is there a nature of this business that causes us to be ready to regularly reinvent ourselves or change directions?
Well, you see, indeed, it's a tightrope, but just like you're saying, you realize that the cliche is that when you're when you're a freelancer, it's, you know, both you enjoy the freedom, but you're willing to live with a certain precariousness. But that being said, you realize that with this crisis hasn't necessarily spared the people we were expecting, you know, that conventions expected to. Some people with stable jobs find themselves, you know, twirling their thumbs and basically losing a salary. I was fortunate to get a few film editing gigs for the digital economy, which kept me afloat. But you know, it's anything is possible, and it leads, you know, well, just like you say, it leads us to rethink how we function, how we go about these times of crisis, and there isn't really any conventional truths when it comes to at least, you know, labor and making money and paying bills and so on. So I haven't yet reached conclusions, and we're still.
No, of course. Nobody has. And I think that's part of the issue. But what also surprised me, and I'd love your insight on this, was in reading the press of the traumas and the stress people are going through to home office, which I would guess for you, and it's very much for me, my office is either in the field or at home, and that's just the way it's been for many years. I don't completely understand the trauma because I can work in an office, but honestly, I prefer this. And yet for some people, it seems to be very not just about their work, but it seems to be an identity issue and things like that.
Identity and environment, like the things that came up a lot here in France, I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar in Austria, is, you know, everybody's situation is not as much affected by what their job is per se, but also their living conditions. If like I'm a unmarried, without kids, you know, young man, I turned 30 during this confinement. But so like I spent it with my girlfriend, and we were pretty easygoing people, so we didn't have too much trouble like that. But so rather the ones that really struggled are those with young kids and
that's fair.
Spending 24 hours at home with you know, tending to children and trying to get some work done. Well, I can't imagine what it is, and I empathize with them.
Well, a lot of people that I've spoken to, the issue wasn't as much the practicality, but the community. That their social network, they felt like they lost their social network. And that means that for a lot of people, the work environment is their social network, or is a big part of their social network. The other thing, just to go back to what you said, Austria, interestingly enough, now that lockdown is ending, 60% of the people have voted to keep home offices in some way. They actually love it.
In France, it's the same.
They just love it.
Yeah, they're adding, like now, in many of the companies, it's not mandatory, but like a lot of the companies are saying, okay, at least 1 day a week.
Exactly, 1 or 2 days a week.
But for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think that also will impact not just where you work, but how often you travel for a meeting. Because as we get used to home office, we get used to this way of talking to each other. We realize that, you know, 85% of all meetings that people get on an airplane for, you could just as effectively do this way. You're not losing anything, but I think that's a cultural thing. All right, so, you know, we're 4 months later. In your mind, it's the first day of the end of lockdown. You are standing at the door. You can walk out the door. You can go anywhere. You can do anything. What's the first thing you want to do or you want?
The first thing I would say is, you know, get shit-faced with some good friends who I haven't seen. Yeah. I actually have plans for that on Thursday. We're allowed. The French government said we can meet indoors. We can't be out in the streets, but of groups of up to 10 people, and that's basically what I have for Thursday.
What do you miss? What do you miss?
What do I miss? Geez, I've been busy. I haven't been thinking about it too much.
It's good.
I do miss like, well, cultural life and a public cultural life.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because okay, we have adapted a little bit with these unusual times, mean unusual measures, and so there's museums and things like this who have more internet initiatives, and it's all charming, but to have something outside that gathers people and of all walks of life, this is something I miss, and it's something that won't be back for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for a few months, maybe for
Yeah, we don't know that yet. Is there anything you're going to miss about lockdown?
Well, it's an easy justification for being a little more introvert.
Yeah.
And I'm not an introvert, but everybody likes every now and then to stay at home and not have to speak with people. And there was during these last 2 months in France a time to really take that in. But at the same time, it was an interesting experience, and I am looking forward overall to getting back to a more in the field rhythm, or split between at home and in the field.
Yeah, and I guess that leads right into my next question, which is, there's not two distinct points of view, but two general directions people seem to be going and looking at this, is a desire to get back to normal as things can be, or that they really had some, not realization, but a choice to make changes now that you can. Which, do you feel you're in one direction or the other, or both, for that matter?
A combination thereof. Going back to normalcy in the sense of being able to have a daily life as before, going out to a shop, going out to a bar, returning to having access to public cultural fare, if you will. And at the same time, we do realize that there are things we can do differently, the way we consume, the way we travel, even the way our relation with the earth. And so, okay, I do have on the one hand this environmental project at the moment, but as far as I personally am concerned, I think I find a new curiosity to look what's close by as opposed to far away, whether it's the Near East or South America. Travel much less with airplanes. Do it still once in a while, but try to limit it, let's say, to once a year, or only if when it's need be. But and this also comes back to the circumstances we live in. No one knows when borders are going to be open again, but gradually, at least in France, we're able to travel a little bit more within the country, and France has a lot of...
Oh God, yes. Come on. You could spend a lifetime just traveling in France, or Italy for that sake, or maybe even Austria. I don't know. It's a little bit of a smaller country. But honestly, I think there's a lot of our own countries that somehow in the last 20 years, we discount. I go to Peru. I go to, and yes, of course, there's the filmmaker aspect. It's something new. We do culture. So there's a reason for it, but yes, I think lately there's a lot of that looking more locally. And we have, for the last 2 years, for what it's worth, already gone to a different travel model for our work and for what we do. And therefore, a flight is the last thing on the list. If there's no other way and we absolutely have to be there in a certain amount of time, fine, we'll get on a plane. It requires a different time concept. That the voyage is part of the equation, whether it's for work or whether it's for pleasure, and therefore that can't be rushed. That has a fix.
Down things a little bit. And also on top of that, I'll share a little anecdote. And coming to the documentary filmmaking process, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, before I had made any films. I was here in Paris at a Mexican film festival, a fairly small festival, bigger than Ethnography, but not a huge fanfare. Anyway, I had met on the last day the director of an acclaimed French film, Être et Avoir, about some kids in a rural school somewhere in the mountains of France, and the struggles and so on that come with that. And I asked this guy, what's the, like, do you have any recommendations on the filmmaking process and like how to go about it? And he said, look at what's going on down your block. That's also one more thing about the confinement and the little moments where you could walk outside in the street. I realized that for a good part of my lifetime, I was not looking up, not looking at the roofs, not looking at the balconies. And there's a lot of beauty there. There's a lot to see and to say. Just look a little bit up.
Is there anything that scares you or makes you nervous thinking about lockdown ending, either personally or culturally?
I'm not sure, but maybe it's just that the uncertainty combined also with the rising, political opportunism, the sense that there's more autocracy, more autocracy in some places and lack of faith in, between the people and political classes elsewhere. I don't see societal, serenity or stability in the foreseeable future. I don't know what it'll translate to. So let's wait and see.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that comes to mind.
Of your three cultures, let's say, right? Or the people that you work with a lot and that are your friends, what are your feelings on how each of those cultures have lived lockdown? Do you have any feelings?
Well, I've spoken with people here and there. Everybody has there's a lot of shared experience. The ones in Brazil, though, it's a little more chaotic because the government has been sort of anti-lockdown, but yet there's the health crisis and a political crisis that comes with it. My family in Israel, who's not very fond of the government, and I can understand. It's has been beaten down and getting a little cynical about about all that's going on there. Then otherwise, it's just following the orders of staying at home and going out only within the framework of what's allowed.
Well, let's highlight that because one of the things I've noticed is some cultures, whether the government imposes or not specific things, people, I guess, are taking it upon themselves to honor lockdown, or even, like my daughter's case in Sweden, they decided to lock down even though the government didn't insist upon it because they have an older woman there living in the house and stuff like that. Other cultures have fought it tooth and nail, and it doesn't matter how many government dictates they're not really doing lockdown. Let's talk about France for a second. Did you feel there was an acceptance or a unity to do this, or it was imposed? What are your thoughts?
There are people tended to follow the rules. They needed a little bit of a whipping from the government because, maybe it's a stereotype, but French aren't as disciplined as Germans, for example. Let's be honest. And actually Monday, which was the first day of the easing of lockdown, you had a lot of people drinking along the Canal Saint-Martin, and that wasn't part of the deal. And so
they've closed that now.
But otherwise, people have generally been going by the rules, not bending it too much. Even among my friends, including the freer spirits, let's say, they
which I think are also decisions people have to make. What's the most important? Of course, the future, but if you don't live to see that future, anything else you'd like to add?
At this point, no. I think we've had a quite complete conversation, and I really appreciate it. I really liked doing this with you. And then look, at some point, well, hopefully the future is bright. There's a lot of work to do. Whether it's in Peru or Brazil or the Middle East or in Europe. But well, I think it's through the efforts of people like yourself that we get to something more cohesive and more where with positive exchange, and we'll see where that goes. And then, you know, aside from that, I recommend that in a couple months, you grab a drink at La Frontera in the little village of Bukata right by the border with Syria.
I would love to. That sounds like fun. As I think you know, I was there filming Artists for Peace while they were painting landscapes with tanks and a big sign saying minefield don't cross. And there was a firefight going on in Syria, literally 2 kilometers away from us, 3 kilometers away, and we could hear it. And all of that together changed the nature of all the work that was done that day. Well, I hope to see you again soon in real life, but if not, let's keep working. I want to know more about the platform, and, you know, if we all keep each other informed, then we're going to help each other make this better.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep you posted on that. I'll send you the link to the film again, and look forward to continuing our discussions and hopefully see you again, whether it's in Paris or Vienna or Lebanon or wherever.
Rack it up, I got a bit of the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up, she got her hands on her knees and she bringing the cake out. Smoke it up, I got some gas, some packs, I'm up in the greenhouse. Ball it up, I'm with the gang, we taking shots off the rebound.